15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Home sort of farm winery that it started to be, and that's kind of what we want it to remain in a way.
Right.
I think the higher end stuff will be smaller.
Okay. How much? How many cases did you make of this particular one?
Of that one we did 3,000 gallons, so that's well. Oh, I'm sorry. We did, I guess, 1,000 gallons, but I'm sorry. So it's 447. I was just told 3,000 today, but I guess I was wrong. So it's 447 cases of that particular one.
Okay.
So we did a little bit more this year. We didn't do an '09. So we haven't released the 2010 yet. So.
Why did you not have an '09? Did you just felt that the grapes weren't of the right quality to produce this, and you use it for the other ones?
Yeah. We after going through fermentations and stuff, we didn't feel like there was one that could be designated as a homestead Riesling. So because we're a bigger winery, we have the luxury that we can do that. If there's years that doesn't make the grade, it's okay, and we can only put forth what we deem is the most the best wine.
Okay.
So.
And how long do you ferment this?
Like how long is the fermentation, or
yes.
How long has it been? For that we try to do like a brick a day. So it kind of spans about like 2 weeks. Usually we'll try to keep the fermentation like that, and sometimes it kind of does what it wants to, but we try to restrain it so that it stays within about a brick of sugar a day, so that it goes down that much.
Okay.
So.
And then do you store it in stainless steel? I saw something on here was like no oak. And
Yeah.
You don't allow any malolactic.
Yeah. No.
And you even have your yeast on here.
Yeah. Yeah, we keep it in stainless steel, and we bottle it early so that we can keep that kind of fresh, fruity characteristics in there, and then it just bottle ages. So yeah, we try to. We've already around April, May, I think, is normal time for bottling.
Well, I definitely like this. I like all wine pretty much. It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare I won't like a wine. Now, I had a wine a couple weeks ago that got the Price is Right boo horns or sad horns, but it wasn't very good. But
yeah.
This is definitely. I think these two wines are I've really enjoyed them. I like this one. I like it because it is really nice and dry. I like it for what this is. I like Davis for what his is. And again, a recommendation. Obviously, somebody down here in San Antonio is not going to be able to really go out and find it, but anyone in the New York area, and up in New York State, if you can find this, and you're looking for something that's dry, then definitely get this. And I really do like this.
We do ship to other states as well, as long as there's some states that don't let us ship to there, but we do ship. So.
Luckily, Texas is a state where you can ship. The only problem we have with Texas is if you are, say, instead of a winemaker, you are a retailer or you're a retailer, we wouldn't be able to get any of the wines in because of how all the legal stuff around the country, and each state has its own little thing. But luckily, we are a state. Wineries can send us wine, which is great because you know what? to me, I should be able, if I want to buy this wine and I go to your website, and I should be able to buy it. I shouldn't have to have someone have to, have my hands tied behind my back and not be able to get it.
Right.
So, and I know every year they put these legislations in about trying to prevent this, but hopefully it will never pass. So now, David was talking about the flatbread that they were pairing with his. Is there something that you guys were specifically pairing with this, or is it just kind of all general?
I mean, I think Rieslings can pair well with so many different types of foods. I mean, especially the way how dry it is. I mean, any sort of light meats, fish, even with some of the just little, like, this fruitiness in there. I mean, you could even pair with some spicy foods as well. So, I mean, I just think Rieslings pair well with so many things. I always feel like if you're in doubt, just you can pair a Riesling with anything.
Right. Well, the kind of, I guess for me, the kind of obvious Asian food pairing, I tend to like General Tso's chicken or orange chicken, the spicy type, the spicier type of stuff, and I can see putting this with that. This is one of those wines where if I'm at one of those Chinese restaurants that has at least some wine, and I've got a Riesling that's going to be probably a little bit drier, but even like the sweeter stuff is going to be helpful with the spicy.
Right.
But this is like slightly spicy, and it's not like going to put my mouth on fire. This is going to work well with that too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I am going to move on to the Fox Run. Definitely keep the video going because on Ustream, everyone will be able to see what's going on. I'll be hanging out and probably try to do some more tweeting now that I'm not like having to do a lot of talking here. But this has been awesome, and this is actually the first time I've done the Ustream stuff. I don't know how successful it turned out as far as the audio part, but the video at least is working. And now that I changed my video, whoops, now that I changed my video thing, I've covered everybody. There we go. Put that up there. So this has been great. How are there a lot of people over there?
Yeah, there's about a dozen or so here. I know a couple of the other wineries are doing it at their own wineries as well, so it's kind of exciting.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been great. I'm going to move on to the next wine. Feel free to keep the camera going, and if anyone wants to pop in and say hi or ask me any questions or let me ask them questions, that'd be awesome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, folks. We're going to go ahead and go over here to the Fox Run. Like I said, I don't know if the audio is coming through on Ustream. Maybe somebody else in the house could tell me if it's working. Anyway, so we're going to do this. We're going to do the next one here. And this is the Fox Run Dry Riesling, also from the Finger Lakes. Oh, there's my little thing. This is the 2009 vintage. So we've got two of the 2009s. So the Red Newt and the Fox Run. And then we had the 2008 Hazlitt. So we're going to make the 2009. This is also a dry. Now on the scale, we'll put this up here. On the scale, this was a little bit closer to medium dry than dry. So let's check this out. We're going to go ahead and do a little rinse on this. So we're going to do a little tweeting on this.
He's starting like a Fox Run he said, anybody wants to just. I think this guy is.
Make sure it still has it right, because it. Two T's in it.
We don't have box
I think the concept is pretty cool. It's a social media wine party
Yeah.
distributed around.
Oh, come on,
All right, so we're going to have too much dead air here. One thing you probably already figured out by now that we had to have two recordings, and unfortunately, with Lauren was on, I missed a lot of it. Hi, David. And
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing outstanding here. Trying to do some tweeting and talking at the same time, and about to have the Fox Run.
Which Fox Run wine do you have?
I have their dry Riesling from 2009.
Okay.
So I'm about to try that. Alright, so now we're just going to go ahead and try this Fox Run. We'll pour a little more in here. Let's try this Fox Run.
Yeah.
Okay, so this nose, I really get the floral out of it. As people who watch my show a lot, they know that I tend to struggle with white wines on the bouquet. But this is one of the ones that I really can smell. It smells like I not necessarily literally walked out my front door and the flowers were over, but I can definitely smell more of the florals. And you know what, I kind of get a bit of that maybe orange or maybe even tangerine type of aroma off it.
Wow.
Well, if they went without this, then.
Yeah.
So
I know on the scale it's closer to Hazlitt's wine, but I think it's a little bit, well, I don't know, maybe, I would call it, my opinion, be a little bit closer to medium dry than what it is, but, you know, this is all relative and it's all opinion. But, you know, it's got that dryness. The acid is a little bit more spread out, kind of like your wine, where it was more spread out. But there's just not that sweetness. Whereas the Hazlitt was really like right down the middle of the tongue. But
Thanks, Sam. Thank you for the get out of jail free card.
Look at it, careful.
it's got a nice tartness to it.
You're welcome.
Kind of like almost like a lemon sweet tart. And I didn't get that kind. I mean, I got a tartness from Hazlitt, but I didn't get that sweet tart, like lemon sweet tartness from it. This one's kind of got that lemony sweet tart. I mean, if it existed, or one of those like powdered type of candy type of things, where there's a little bit of sweetness, but it's not like, you know, it's not like a really sweet candy. I like it. I think I like yours and the Hazlitt a little bit better, but it doesn't mean I don't like this. You know, it doesn't mean like it's bad. I just, you know, there's a preference.
Yeah. Actually, in those three wines that you have, those particular three wines, I think really represent a spectrum of style, both in terms of the choice of the product line, the choice of the particular bottle from each winery, but also the wineries themselves, their house style, if you will, or sub-regional style. Those Fox Run wines tend to often have this real kind of laser-like acidity, but at the same time, focus. I guess when I think of those wines, I think them more focusing on lime peel and sort of real fresh things like that. And I think maybe that sweet tart candy kind of impression that you have might be the same thing that I'm talking about when I talk about the lime peel and that
Exactly.
crispiness. And I'm not sure. You know, one of the things we're trying to figure out, one of the things that happens when winemakers and vineyardists work together for a couple hundred years is they start to figure out what comes from the land, what comes from the winemaking, and everything sort of gels together. And we're doing that at Finger Lakes, even though we've only been at making really vinifera wines for maybe 20 years.
Right.
So we asked the question, how much does Peter Bell, the winemaker, influence that expression of style, and how much do the vineyards that he's working with influence that impression of style, or expression of style? So in any case, it's there. And I guess where it comes from is a little bit academic,
Right.
but it's a fun pursuit to try to figure that out.
Right, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just go, hey, do I like it? Tastes good. They're not worried about, what kind of soil, what's the soil and what's the yeast and what's the winemaker and what, they just want to know, does it taste good? And, I know that I've had talks with people that aren't really into wine too much, and they really kind of ask me that question, does the soil really matter? And I'm like, yes. And I try to explain it, but I'm not a winemaker. I read the books. But sometimes the books don't really explain it. At least the wine books that I read don't really explain that kind of thing to me where it makes sense. It's just kind of like, it's loam soil. Like, you should already know. You should know that loam soil does this or that shale does this. And so you have to kind of read between the lines when it's kind of like watching a reviewer or reading the reviewer. You kind of have to listen to what he says instead of like he says, it's an 89, okay, well, great, it's an 89, but is it an 89 that I like? Or he may say it's a 78, but he may not like that kind of wine. Like, I don't really like regular sweet red wines, and I tend to give them low scores. But it's a personal preference, but somebody else might love it and go, well, Mark's 79 or 78 is my 92.
Very much. I'm glad you could join us out here.
I'll stop by probably in another day or two and get some stuff.
All right. Yeah, we're streaming live.
Streaming live.
Streaming live. Yeah, well, it's really, wine is so fun. And, sort of connecting flavors and characteristics of wine with the earth is really fun. The whole question is so complex, though, in terms of the soil, the temperatures, the weather, the precipitation, the canopy management, the nutrition, everything that, even though it's tempting to kick the ground and say, oh, I got a lot of slate here, these wines are going to be really, have a lot of minerality.
Right.
Well, you do see those correlations in sort of locations and site in the wines, but the actual reason behind it is still pretty much a mystery, as much as any of us think we have it figured out. When you start thinking you have it figured out, usually what you realize is there's 10 other factors you hadn't considered, so you have to keep going.
And that's why, where you do have, especially as winemakers start learning what they're doing. I know the Texas winemakers, they're starting to figure out that maybe the usual Cabernet Sauvignons and Merlots are not the best grapes to grow in this area, at least in the hill country, or in some of the other areas in Texas, that maybe it's the Tempranillos, and not really Zinfandels, but the Tempranillos, and maybe some of the hybrids are the ones that really take to the climate and the soils here versus the usual big wines. Oh, you're tempting me some more. Look at that. That is beautiful. Everyone getting that sense of place of, and even as wine drinkers, they'll sit there and say, this is definitely California, not just New World, or this is definitely Australia or Oregon or Finger Lakes or Texas, as they figure out, what works best in their areas and be able to take advantage of that.
Well, that's the real key, is to learn to understand your region and learn really what's appropriate. Appropriate's a complicated word in itself, but you figure out what really works, and the goal is ultimately what's in the glass. And the winemaker's job is to take what's in the vineyard and, again, most appropriately and successfully interpret it in the glass. Mm-hmm. But what comes out of the vineyard is, you're halfway through by then. You have to figure out what grows best, and it's a long process. I mean, you plant a vineyard, it takes a few years to get the grapes, and it takes a few years to get mature grapes, and then it takes a few years to figure out what the wine does in the bottle. So it's not an overnight process.
Right. It's not like something where next year you're going to buy a vineyard and you're just or you're going to plant a vineyard and you're going to have great wine in a year. It does take time. I've read it over and over. People, unless you're going into something that's already been established, if you're starting something from scratch, these things take years, not just a year or two, to really get anything out of it that's usable. Like you said, it takes you a few years just even for the vines to get growing, and then to produce good grapes. Where I'm sure the first couple 2-3 years that these vines are producing grapes are really not suitable for any wine. Mm-hmm. Or you could make wine, but it's not going to be that good.
Yeah, well, it's the quality and characteristics certainly change, and those young vineyards have a certain allure in terms of their characteristics too. My experience is those those first couple of vintages, particularly in a variety like Riesling, they're not the ones that show the most depth of structure and complexity and density on the palate. But at the same time, if you look at things like vibrancy of fruit and sort of electricity of flavor, sometimes they have very strong assets in that area. It's all about figuring out the assets and deficiencies of each individual vineyard, and then how to interpret them and combine them in a way that works.
Right. Now that you touched upon something about age of vines. With a lot of red wines, I mean, especially Zinfandel, they like to tout old vine, and even though old vine doesn't really have a legal meaning, but they'll talk about the vines are 80 years old. Is there anything with Riesling that having something that was, if there was an 80-year-old vine, is that going to produce better grapes than, say, a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old set of vines?
Well, there's a difference, and we're starting. I'm starting to really pay attention to that as we get locked into really sort of consistent relationships with vineyards and with growers. I'm working with about 20 acres of fruit that's in the first or second crop this coming year, maybe third crop. But I'm also working with some vineyards that were planted in the late 70s, so that makes them 30, 35 years old. And there's definitely a difference in fruit. Why? That's the big question. Why? Is it the age of the vine? There's a lot of things that happen as the vine gets older. They get bigger. They get more developed root systems. I think the physiology of the vine does change in terms of its position in life. It's kind of like us. We stop growing up and start growing out. I don't know.
Exactly.
It's pretty exciting to look at those factors and interpret them in glass. The older vines, I think one of the big things is the whole water dynamic with an older vine is different, especially here, where most of our water supply comes from the ground up. Very little irrigation in Riesling vineyards, probably essentially none in the Finger Lakes. But I was talking about those relatively variable topsoils on top of shale, and that shale, there's water seeping out through the shale. So what we're getting is groundwater seeping up into those vineyards as well as rainwater percolating down. So those older vines with very well-developed root systems have a very different sort of seasonal water dynamic than a young vine with roots only a foot in the ground that rely largely on precipitation moisture. So that's just one of those factors a whole host of factors that may be impacting those differences.
So yeah, those younger vines are struggling more to get that water because they're relying more on the rainwater rather than the older ones. They're not an unlimited supply, but they're not struggling as much. So their grapes are going to have a different type of character to them.
I think that's certainly one of the factors.
And that's something that I do describe to people when, especially when they ask about dry states like Texas or even places like New Mexico and Arizona, and they are surprised that you can actually grow grapes because 100-degree weather. You're thinking, well, can you grow grapes? I'm like, yeah, you can. Certain grapes aren't going to do well here, but other grapes will, as I'm shaking the table and the camera's moving around. I'll even mention, about Spain and the southern, the middle part of Spain. It's as hot as it gets here in Texas, and they're growing great Tempranillo over there. That's why I think the people in Texas are starting to figure out maybe Tempranillo is our grape to grow rather than Cabernet or Merlot or even Zinfandel. Well, all three of these wines have been awesome, and this has been really great. I'm hoping to do more of this type of thing where whether it's getting winemakers involved or getting other wine enthusiasts or wine bloggers trying to do this multiple Skype thing. Maybe I can get the kinks worked out a little bit better. Especially when you get multiple video feeds in here. Haven't figured out exactly how that works. I did a little experimentation last night because I have a second Skype account, and it worked, but I wasn't really doing much with it. It's been really great to talk with you and talk with Lauren and the other gentleman popping in saying hi.
It's a friendly neighborhood here in the Finger Lakes.
Exactly. So this has been awesome, and I don't know which one I want to drink next. I think I'm gonna go for a little bit of sweetness here, just because I've had a couple dry wines, and I think now I'll start actually just instead of spitting, actually sipping a little more on the wine. I can tell you, after having the dry wines, there's that nice contrast with the red newt and the more sweetness to it.
It is. I like
So,
that. You know,
I haven't been able to watch the Twitter stream much. What's been going on over there? You get a lot of. Have you been getting a lot of people tweeting about the wines that they've been having?
Oh yeah, the Twitter stream is on fire.
Let me get into that. Here we go. Of course, my video now just got really too big. Hold on, let's move this. Scrunch that up a little bit. That way I can look at the rest of my screen here and not have my video completely obliterate you there. Oh, definitely. There's a lot of people tweeting on this.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to switch to the Twitter stream real quick. Twitter. And if you look, so, I mean, we can see there's lots of tweets going on, quite a few every minute. There's a lot of people going on, talking about what they're doing here. I got one viewer.
Right. That might be
one
my
viewer.
at my laptop.
It's all right. I'll have a lot more viewers of the actual website. And now that the sun's going down, we'll get some other light in here. Oh, the switch is on the other side. There we go. Now we got some light, some extra light going on. There's the sun.
It's a good block.
Really?
Well, it can be. Well, a lot of times something happens. Oh, it destroyed one in 2001. It was there.
Oh dear.
Yeah, goodness. I broke that line.
That's what would be.
Oh, it's got a good Twitter.
Well, that's what it is. That's why you can see what we do. That was my old home. I did a lot of kept the down. But still, it was still mine. Yeah, it was still a great book.
Adding my little tweet to the whole Twitter stream.
All right.
Still getting cleaned out. So yeah.
Alright, some nice little tweets here. So, see, Liz Lakewood, she's got 4 reasons to open the grill heating up and close on the line.
Wait a minute. Sound.
I'll leave it at that. I won't go any farther with that, but I'll retweet it.
Yeah, we actually have a.
Let me make sure I follow Hazlitt.
Somebody said that they got a problem with top doors, but it's not their thinking.
Yeah.
On another basis, it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, there's like, yeah.
Right.
it's
And, even if you love it,
Yeah. After one was so.
Right.
I want to see the damn barrel over there.
Right,
I want to see
I
the
know.
margin.
I like
Yeah, exactly. I don't see anything. I don't know.
It's just very small.
Right.
It's very, very small.
I'll be happy to take for change.
I would say it's enjoy.
So how many of the wineries sent out wine for all this? I mean, I got 3.
Yeah, I would. I'm going to say probably a dozen wineries or so. It coordinated with sending samples. I think through Finger Lakes Wine Country.
Okay.
Was a not everybody got. It wasn't a standard pack of 3. It was sort of
Kind of a random.
and they got a different or there were a number of different permutations that went out to people.
Right.
And so it's kind of like all business models to other regional people. You can't
Makes sense. Sharing my So, I mean, I know you do. But if you want to do your own,
So how close? What part of Texas are you in, Mark?
I'm in San Antonio, so that's the southern central.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's in north. He's up in what town's he in? In the Hill Country, about an hour north or so. I
Fredericksburg.
guess. Right near
Kerrville.
Fredericksburg. Yeah, I think you about a half an hour from Fredericksburg, maybe 20 minutes.
Okay. There's and one of the things that I'm planning on doing over the summer is visiting more of the Texas wineries. I visited them about a year or so ago, and a few, but just how my schedule wasn't really the best time to try to visit a lot of wineries. But this year I hope to. I think in about a couple weeks I have to see what my day job schedule is. But in a couple weeks I'm hoping to go up to the Austin area and check out a few of their wineries over a couple day period. I also have some friends up there I'd like to go see. Haven't seen them in a while, but that's one of my goals is to hit some more of the Texas wineries and do video work up there. Be able to sit down with some of the winemakers, talk about their vineyards. Not everybody wants to be on camera, and that's cool. If they don't want to be on camera, that's fine. I just want to be able to go out and visit and experience more of the Texas wines, because even the ones that I buy for the show, I don't really get a lot of Texas wines. I just kind of go through the aisle and just kind of pick and choose. A lot of times based on label. I mean, your label here would be something that I would be like, cool label, let's buy it.
I guess we'll have to send some of that to Texas.
You definitely should. But I can tell you, there's quite a few, at least in my area, there's quite a few wine shops, or not wine shops, but wine, large and wine liquor stores that have some great selections. Specs, which is actually out of Houston, they've opened up a store here. Gabriel's is another local chain. They've got actually a big superstore in the north side of town, but all their other Gabriel's have pretty good wine selections. There's a couple other ones called Twin Liquors. They're out of Austin. They're somewhat new to this area, and then there's another place called WB Liquors that is out of El Paso that's starting to come into town. I don't really know much about them. I just kind of saw that all of a sudden that they're opening up a store, so it'll be interesting to go visit them and see how they're doing. And then there's other wine shops in town. There's a Cyclone Benny. They've got their wine shop is a house. It's an old house, and each of these rooms, it's someone's home, or was someone's home, and it's just filled with wine. And it felt very bookstore-ish, like college bookstore type of atmosphere, that instead of books on the shelves, you have wines. And I kind of felt that kind of added to the whole, each bottle of wine is its own story. And it was just very cool to walk around there and check out their wines. And there's a few other smaller shops that I haven't been able to visit yet, but there's a few other smaller shops that are around town.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm out here in the middle of the tasting room in our crowd of Riesling fanatics. And my batteries, I just got my battery notice, so I'm probably going to have to sign off pretty quick. But it's been great having you join us here at Red Newt for the Riesling Hour.
Hey, I've really enjoyed being on and having you and everybody else come on and just having the wine sent. All three of the wines have been wonderful. I would recommend any of the three for anyone that's looking for a Riesling, especially something that is different than what everybody else in America knows for Riesling. That's Washington State and Germany. This is something that if you can find New York wines, if you find these Rieslings, get them, because it's going to give you another perspective of Riesling that you're not going to get from the other states. And just it's a great expression of the grape.
Yeah, and I would encourage anyone. Of course, I always encourage people when they go into the wine shop to ask for our wine.
Of course.
But, Finger Lakes wineries are really expanding their production of Riesling in general, Red Newt included, and starting to distribute in other states more and more. And the key question to ask your purveyor of fine wines wherever you live is, what Rieslings do you have from the Finger Lakes?
Exactly. And hopefully they have at least something. And if they say, I don't have any, then ask them why. Because I'm sure that one of the big distributors in Texas or wherever state you're in has some way to get wine to that wine shop. And if it's a good wine shop, they'll figure out a way to get the wine to you. Even if it's not the big distributors. I mean, there's lots of small distributors out there that have, some smaller portfolios. A good wine shop is going to figure out a way to at least going to try to get that wine to you. Unless it's something that's just super obscure and is difficult to import into the United States or difficult to ship inside, into the U.S. for some reason. But they should be able to get it. I mean, if I walked into Specs or Gabriel's, and if they didn't have this, actually I know they don't have any. I think they may have a couple Finger Lake Rieslings, but if they didn't have it, they should be able to ask for it, and they should at least make an attempt for it. This has been wonderful. Myself, it's probably time for me to move on and actually get some dinner. Maybe pair one of these up. It's it's getting to be dinner time down here in San Antonio, 7:30, and end the show here. And then what I'll do is I'll end up compiling this. It's going to be 2 different videos. Unfortunately, when we had the whole big break, I forgot to restart the recording about halfway into talking with Lauren. So we got like the last part of all that, and so I'll combine these 2. They'll be up on the site. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be next Friday. I'll make it like we call a Friday conversation.
Oh, great. I'll be watching for it. We'll spread the word.
Awesome, because if nothing else, at least on this side with Skype, I have a program that allows me to record the actual call. And whereas Ustream, I'm not really sure how it came out. But as soon as I get off with all this, I'm going to go ahead and look at the Ustream recording. Because I did tell it to record so I can at least look at it later and decide whether I should keep it up or not.
All right.
So, David's been great. Everybody else, we're going to go ahead and end the show. As always, thanks for everyone for stopping in and having this live look of some great Finger Lake wines, Red Newt and Hazlitt, and then Fox Run. And if you can find these in your local shop, please check them out, or any of the Finger Lake wines. Not just these 3. And if you don't have any of them in your area, ask them why. Where are they? See if they can get them for you. And that's going to do it for the show.
All right. Thanks, Mark. It's been great.
David, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night.